Pete Hines sat down with GameIndustry.biz to discuss several details on the next Fallout game. Here's what he said. Hey guys, JV here, and today I'm sharing my thoughts on the new Pete Hines interview. Keep in mind this is still a speculation video uploaded on July 18th. This information could very well be proven wrong after today, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for more Fallout 76 videos. Before we jump in, I've linked the article in the description below. I highly suggest you read it for yourselves before watching this video. In his interview with GamesIndustry.biz, Pete Hines shares details on PvP, role-playing, trading, and the nature of live service with regards to Fallout 76. Here's the TLDR on everything in the article. Just quick points, very little details, what you want to know about Fallout 76 from this article right here. Fallout 76 may not have traditional NPC traders. If you want to trade items, you will trade with other players. You can set up shops to sell to other players. Seeing other players does not mean you have to kill them. You can decide how to interact with other players. Bethesda wants those interactions to be your choice. Quests will be unlocked by finding holotapes, robots, and other objects in the world that activate each story. Pete believes this will create an even more engaging experience than previous Fallout games. There are systems in place to keep interactions from turning into a gunfight if that's not what players want. There is PvP, but it's more like issuing challenges. Bethesda is still figuring this out in playtesting. Bethesda wants tension when you see other players, similarly to how you would feel if you ran across a Deathclaw in Fallout 4. Stronger players will not be able to prey on weaker players by constantly drawing them into battles. Other players should not be able to impede your progress. Other players can't steal from you, and they can't kill you. Todd Howard doesn't want death to be a huge negative or to stop progression. Bethesda really wants the stranger danger, friend or foe element when you come across other players. Pete claims that trading is never necessary in Fallout 76. You can find guns and ammo, break those down into parts, and use those to upgrade your weapons. Bethesda doesn't want this game to dictate systems or decide what you can or can't live without as a player. Bethesda wants players to decide how they want to play. Fallout 76 as an online game is an experiment for Bethesda, and in no way means that they are done making single-player games. Starfield will be a single-player title with zero co-op multiplayer. Starfield is already in development at Bethesda and is playable right now internally. The Elder Scrolls 6 still needs technology that isn't available in order to create the game. Alright, those were the quick hits. Now let's delve into every piece of information with as many details that we can glean from this article. So, Pete talks a lot about breaking this traditional RPG formula where essentially there are people standing around, NPCs standing around, you go up to them and you engage in a transaction. You give them stuff, they give you caps, or you barter for some specific item from a non-player character. He uses Destiny as an example. He says if you want to buy something, you don't go to other players, you can't go to other players. You go to NPCs and say, I want to buy this, I saved up enough of these things. But in their game, they don't want you to do that. If that's how you want to play, you have to do that with other players. But he really separates that interaction from, being something that needs to be in an RPG. He says it's still a role-playing game, but you can set up shop, you can travel around the map, and you can buy and sell stuff from other players. I think that's an interesting point, and I really largely agree with him. This is a trope that we've had in RPGs, but I don't think this necessarily, defines an RPG. Maybe the overall feel or something that we expect in role-playing games, but we don't have to have NPCs standing around and those are the only interactions we have possible in order to trade items. He goes on to elaborate about PvP. He says, yes, there's an element of PvP, but it's not every man for himself, and the last one standing wins, which is very battle royale, right? If you see somebody, you don't have to kill them before they kill you because it's not a shooter. It's not battle royale or any of the other 100 things that people assumed that it was. It's an RPG where you can still do quests and explore the world. Pete's a marketing guy, he's been in the business for the longest time, but I wish he would stop saying it's an RPG where you can still do quests and explore the world, because that puts the emphasis on, we think you're going to be killing people, but you can still go and do this, where in reality, I think that this game is going to be you're doing quests and exploring the world, but you can kill people. Unless I'm mistaken on that, I think the emphasis should be reversed when they're talking about questing, exploring, and PvP. Pete goes on to discuss questing and how NPCs work in previous games. He says if you're walking up a hill and there's an NPC we've placed out there's a little red thing that shows up on your compass to say, that guy's a bad guy. We cheated for you. You already know. But in Fallout 76, you don't know anything about that person or what their motives are unless you've come across them before. This is a really good point because if you sit down and think about it, Fallout has been a game where you kind of know what to expect. You know something is ahead. So the element of surprise usually is not there. And it sounds like they're trying to tap into that in terms of creating tension with other players in 76. Then he goes on for the big kicker, which is I'm sure why a lot of you clicked on this video. He says there are systems in place to keep it from turning into a gunfight if that's not what people want. This is still so painfully vague. We are having, details withheld because I'm sure they're still working out the details, but what systems would keep it from turning into a gunfight but also maintain tension? That's my big question. Does that mean that on my game I can personally control how these encounters go down? Can I flip a switch that says I'm PvE only and I don't want to kill you, I only want to trade? Then he says the game does PvP but more like issuing challenges. This is the second time we've heard issuing challenges from Pete. So once again, how is there tension if I'm issuing a challenge to another player? Is the game kill on sight, and then once I respawn and come back to life, then I can choose how I want to interact with this person? Is it always going to be a first kill and then we figure out what to do later sort of system? We don't really know. They say they're still figuring some of this out in playtesting. But again, the basic idea is that you see somebody and there should be tension. Then he makes an analogy to Fallout 4 and says it's no different than when I walk into a town and see a Deathclaw. And this is an interesting point too, because I think when I see a Deathclaw, I immediately think, oh no, I need to avoid this or I need to kill this. If that's the kind of tension they want, then that does make it seem like they're leaning towards an adversarial sort of thing between players. And again, I really hope that's not the case, because when I walk into a town and see a Deathclaw, I don't think, oh, can I trade with that Deathclaw? I mean, I know he knows that, but it's kind of an interesting point to make. He goes on to elaborate, explaining that when players encountered Deathclaws, they would choose to avoid them or engage them head on, just like I said. If they were killed, they could try again as many times as they wanted until they decided to go elsewhere and come back when they are stronger. Again, this just confuses me. If this is a direct analogy, then can we try as many times as we want to go back and kill the person that killed us? Or can we, decide to go elsewhere and put a protection on ourselves and say we don't want to engage in PvP because this thing's too strong? The interviewer asks Pete about, stronger players being able to prey on the weak to constantly draw them into battles that they can't win. And Pete says that this won't be the case in Fallout 76 and that Todd has promised that death won't set players back in the way that it does across other games. You could try 5 more times and die and then go, it's too powerful for me. I'm going to go away and do other stuff or just travel around this area and come back later. And continuing with the Deathclaw analogy, it should be exactly the same with anyone else. They shouldn't be able to impede your progress. They can't steal your shit. They can't kill you. So let's reiterate this scenario. Say I'm walking into a town, Lexington or Concord in Fallout 4. I see the Deathclaw in the beginning. He's saying that if instead that Deathclaw is another player, this player should not be able to impede my progress, steal my stuff, or kill you if I don't want it to. This suggests to me that there are systems in place to protect ourselves, to protect and have a more PvE experience if we want the game to. If they're stressing player choice, I think player choice to play by yourselves should be an option. The problem here is that we're getting a lot of what, but we're not getting a lot of how. We're getting, you're going to get this, this, this. How are you going to accomplish these things? I think that's what Bethesda is withholding, and it's because they just don't know exactly how at this point, if I had to guess. Moving on, Pete says, Todd said before, we don't want death to be a huge negative. It never stops your progression. There are ways to do that without it being punishing and annoying, but still having a bit of that stranger danger. Is that a friend or a foe? Do they think I'm a friend or a foe? How do I want this to play out? I'm sounding like a broken record here, but again, how? How can we still have tension but also control our own experiences? The next topic is on trading, and their interviewer suggests that trading is necessary in RPGs, but Pete says that it's technically never necessary to trade with an NPC in Fallout 4 or any other Bethesda RPG. He says trading stuff is a pain in the ass, so people would use guns and weapons they found to break those down into the parts they needed to upgrade their own stuff and use the ammo that they find. You can do that, and I think he means in Fallout 76. Nothing says you have to trade or else, because that's taking choice out of your hands. I've now dictated a system that you can't live without, but what if that's not how you want to play? What if you want to be a loner who just lives off the land and builds the stuff that he needs, uses the workshops he finds in the wasteland? That should all be viable. So he's suggesting that even beyond trading, they don't want concrete systems in place that dictate how you will play the game. They want it to be very free-flowing and organic as to how you approach different situations. Here are many different ways that you can accomplish what you're trying to get done. That's a really refreshing way to approach a game, and I think it makes a lot of sense for an RPG. So again, we're getting a lot of what, but we don't know exactly how. The topic shifts over to games as a service, and the interview essentially asks if everything is shifting towards live service. Pete says, industry-wide, I have no idea. For us, it will always continue to be a mix. You heard Todd say that the next adventure after 76 is Starfield, an epic single-player only game. They were like, for this franchise, for Fallout, this was an idea we had 4 years ago, so we're going to do it. But the next thing we're going to do is single-player. Sure, it might have some social features, but it's not going to be a co-op multiplayer game. It's up to the devs and what they want to do and what's a good fit. This is just addressing concerns that people had that, oh, since they're now making an online game, all future games will be online, which I think is just a ridiculous, thing to jump to. That conclusion makes no sense in my mind, but apparently they have to reiterate that. As for announcing stuff, Pete said, me and my team felt with the announcement of Fallout 76, it was important to give context for where the studio is heading next. Starfield has already been sniffed out as a trademark filing, and Todd already said we were doing The Elder Scrolls 6. There's going to be some amount of time between those because they're all big games with big development, but that just felt better than announcing Fallout 76. And then your first question is, does that mean you're done with single player? And I can't tell you, well, actually, the next one is a big new single player epic IP, but we're not talking about it. And I have to dance around that. Why not just tell them what we're doing? In terms of giving a release time frame for Starfield, Pete actually said that it may arrive before the new generation of consoles. He says, in the case of Starfield, it's already in development, it's playable. Todd had previously said that there is tools and tech he wanted for The Elder Scrolls 6 that wasn't there yet. I think he was asked yesterday and he said some of the tech is there and some of it isn't. So I think it's a mix. There are some things he has now that he didn't have previously, but maybe some things he wants the team to have to be able to do what they can't do yet. Finally, he comments on the sales of other Bethesda publisher games. He says, lots of things don't sell as well as Fallout and Elder Scrolls. Our belief is that we want to aim for the right goal of what we're making and what those franchises can do. If you hold up every game as if it's got to do what Fallout and Skyrim did, then you're not going to make many games because very few games will do that. Like, Doom didn't do that, but Doom still sold awesome. So it's just about what's the right size for the dev team, dev cycle, size of the audience, and are we doing a good job of delivering on that? Then finally, he wraps up the interview by saying, in general, I always want everything to do more than it did. If we sold 8, I wouldn't have minded 9. If we sold 20, I don't mind 21. There's never a point as publisher or developer where you say, we literally should stop selling copies of this. You always want more players, you want to do better. I think we had some things that did well. I think we had some things that we thought might sell better, but it is what it is. So guys, that is the entire Pete Hines interview. I think it sheds a lot of light on how Bethesda is thinking about Fallout 76 and how these systems are going to, what they want, what their goals are. They're not giving us the exact how of how they work, but they're saying this is what we want. And for now, until we get more details, that's as good as it's going to get. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. In the comment section below, tell me what you think about all of this new info, these details. Does it make you more or less comfortable for Fallout 76? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the video, remember to subscribe for more Fallout 76 videos just like this. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.